Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Slash Lighting Costs with the new MegaDrive LED system from California Lightworks. My name is Eric Sandy, and I'm the digital editor of Cannabis Business Times. Today, we're going to be focusing our presentation on the new MegaDrive LED system from California Lightworks. Just by moving the individual drivers from each LED fixture into a central power supply, both fixture and installation costs are dramatically reduced. Optimized applications for greenhouse, indoor, and vertical growing decrease the lighting costs and significantly improve your return on investment. In today's webinar, Craig Adams of California Lightworks will demonstrate the effects of LED installs on 3 different cannabis cultivation operations. That's indoor, vertical, and greenhouse. At the conclusion of today's presentation, we'll be getting together for a Q&A. So just a few housekeeping items real quick. Regarding that Q&A, you'll see a Q&A box or a window at the bottom of your screen. If you click that button, that'll open up the window and you'll be able to type in your questions as the presentation goes on. I'll be gathering those and relaying them to Craig and CEO George McTarian at the conclusion of the presentation. Also, just note that we are recording today's presentation and we'll be sending out a copy of the video to all registrants. That'll be coming out via email in the next few days here. And now with that, I'm very pleased to welcome Craig Adams, the co-founder and vice president of sales and marketing at California Lightworks.
Greetings and thanks for joining us on this webinar. I'm here with George Matarian, my partner at California Lightworks. Today we're going to go through, first of all, a brief introduction who we are, the key challenges as we see them in horticulture lighting today, and then introducing MegaDrive, which seeks to answer these challenges. And then we'll go through some of our key applications in greenhouse, indoor, multi-level growing, a quick summary, and then we'll move on to a question and answer period. So just California Lightworks was founded in 2008. George and I were both on a quest to try to develop LED grow lights. At the time, there was very little options with LEDs. It was mostly cheap Chinese UFOs and a few good products, but very, very expensive. So since then, we've been totally focused on design, engineering, manufacturing, and distribution. We have a fully integrated factory in Los Angeles, California. We're 100% focused on horticulture lighting and close integration with growers and helping better returns on investment. Over these past years, we've developed a pretty wide distribution all over the world. We started with hobby growers. Now more and more, most of our business is in commercial indoor, commercial greenhouse, and commercial multi-level applications. So we're always trying to use technology to solve what we see as limitations or challenges from a lighting point of view. So these are the main ones that we saw when we started to develop this MegaDrive idea. Number one was high fixture cost. I think everybody realizes how much more efficient that LEDs are, but there's a very high barrier to entry with high upfront costs. Next is high installation costs, especially with individual power drops over the canopy. This makes it very difficult and expensive to install. You have power drops for electrician charges are very high. Next, crop yield and quality, and that's especially related to spectrum and light intensity that's really optimized for plants. And for the particular crop in mind, we see different lighting strategies for different types of crops. Since the beginning, our main focus has been on cannabis and for flowering. We also do quite a lot of business in veg, in traditional agriculture, especially in greenhouse. But our main focus has always been on getting good yield from cannabis and flower in indoor and greenhouse. And then finally, we see a very high cost of environmental controllers and very limited control over really the light function. That's really basically on, off, maybe some really rudimentary dimming, but that's about it. So these are kind of the areas where we really thought, how can we apply technology to solve these challenges? So as we said, HID, especially HPS, ceramic metal halide, the fixtures are very cheap. So you can see a typical LED fixture with the same light output, maybe 2, 3, 4 times as expensive. So quite a big barrier to entry. Of course, we all know that, especially today, LEDs are much more efficient than any bulb-based technology. Obviously, we measure that in micromoles per joule. So LED technology keeps going where the efficiency measured in micromoles per joule really keeps going up every 6 months. And today we see, and especially in red, this is already over 4 micromoles per joule, and the theoretical upper limit is around 5.5 micromoles per joule. If we look at most HPS fixtures, you're looking at maybe 1.9, and metal halide, ceramic metal halide, even lower than that. So no question from an operating point of view that LEDs over time will be cheaper. Another thing we see in a lot of our competitors' designs is they use external LED drivers for each fixture. These are generally made by a third party, not made by the fixture manufacturer. These create another point that needs to be installed, another point of failure. They're very expensive. That's as much as 30% of the fixture cost is in the driver itself. We also see that most lighting, both HID and LED, really requires 1 power drop per fixture, or maybe for a small group of fixtures, but this still forces you to do multiple electrical connections all over the canopy. This is the main cost of installation, which most people do not consider installation costs when they're looking at a light purchase, but it can be as much as 50% of the fixture cost just in installation. Also, we see with power drops and the electronics over the canopy, this is very difficult to install, number one, difficult to maintain over time. The main point of failure in any LED driver tends to be in the driver, in the electronics. And if that's over the canopy, this becomes very expensive even to change a light, to fix a light. And same problem with HID, even to change a bulb, it's over the canopy, and this gets very expensive. Next, we also see, especially in a greenhouse, most of our competitors are using external drivers, and these drivers also have to be mounted close to the fixture. So this means either number one, you have additional shadow effect with all these drivers installed above the canopy, or in some cases, you'll see on this picture to the right, they recommend we'll put the driver below the canopy so it won't create shade, but then you really multiply the installation costs, especially for electrical wiring. Finally, light spectrum intensity is really the key factor in your return on investment and the efficiency of a lighting system. I'm sure most of you have heard of the McCree curve or the peak absorption rates in photosynthesis. This simply states that the main driver from a spectrum point of view for photosynthesis is in the deep red and deep blue. Obviously, there is photosynthesis in the middle spectrums, in the greens, yellows, oranges, but the absorption rate is much less, therefore much less efficient. So if we look at the typical spectrums of common lighting technologies, HPS was very good in bloom, and that's especially because it has a very high percentage of red. And that we feel is the main driver of yield with any fruit or flowering plants. But you can see it's very low on blue, so it's not a very good veg light, which really depends on a more balanced and a higher level of blue. Metal halide, on the other hand, had a high level of blue, which was a great veg light, great for leafy greens and herbs, etc., but not a good bloom light. You could see the low power density in red. Ceramic metal halide is a little bit better. It's somewhat closer to HPS. It has better red, but all HPS, MH, even CMH are very low efficiency as far as micromoles per joule, and they're really the percentage of light you're using for plants is limited to their spectrum. Even white LEDs, you can see the chart on the right. I'm not sure if most of you understand that there are not really any white LEDs. It starts out as a blue LED. Then with a phosphor coating, they try to shift the color temperature. So a white LED, it's great in blue. They have huge spikes in blue. It makes a great veg light. However, it's very hard to push the phosphor far over to the right and get a high red presentation. So white LEDs are, number one, less efficient because the white LEDs are much less efficient than red LEDs, for example. And also, you just can't get the efficiency of red phosphor-coated LEDs is somewhat lower than discrete color LEDs, especially in the red spectrum. Finally, we talk about controls. In greenhouses, environmental controllers are very important. It's a big part of the expense of an installation. They're quite sophisticated. They control almost everything you can imagine, the grow operation. However, for lighting control, number one, obviously they're expensive. Number two, it's limited. I mean, it's kind of limited to an off-on function, maybe through a contactor panel, or maybe you have some rudimentary dimming, but you're just dimming everything up and down. So the controls are very expensive and quite limited for lighting. Finally, another point is most current light installations are relatively fixed. In other words, there's a fixed power drop, there's a fixed location for the driver, a fixed location to the fixture itself. This means that if you want to expand, contract, move it to another facility, it's a very expensive proposition. So that brings us to MegaDrive, and we really tried to solve as many of those problems as we could through this totally different approach to how we power. Number one, we eliminate all the drivers from the fixtures themselves. These are all consolidated into a single high power supply. This power supply can run up to 30 fixtures. It will run off any voltage from 208 to 480 using direct incoming power. So here you have just one network and you've removed all the basic electronics into a driver and out from over the canopy. So this really gives us some interesting potential. If you look at these two charts on the left, a typical large greenhouse installation may have 2,000 power drops, and they're all over the canopy, and they're up in the rafters and very difficult to get to. With MegaDrive, you'd have as few as 60 drivers, and these maybe not even in the greenhouse itself, but maybe in the hallway, down the hallway next to the power panel. So you have greatly reduced costs in installation. We've eliminated the drivers individually, so that reduces the fixture cost. And you see the chart on the right comparing to a typical installation where the cost of the fixtures and the cost of installation might reach 1.6 million, for example. With the MegaDrive approach, we can really save up to 30% on the total project with that lower fixture cost and drastically lower installation cost. When we come to Spectrum, first of all, we have this is with both channels on, just all on and full blast. You can see, unlike the other lighting technologies, we're able to put the lighting peak power right lined up with the peak photosynthesis curve. So it's much more efficient. We have much less lost light in those middle spectrums, greens, yellow, orange. While there is some, and the appearance of the light is white, you have much higher concentrations in those peak photosynthesis area. We also have two channels. So the red is on one channel, the white is on the other channel. Now this is very good, especially if you're doing veg and bloom in the same room. You want to back off the red in veg and maximize that blue. But the opposite is true in bloom. You want to really back off the blue and maximize the red, similar to what an HPS light does. A lot of growers don't realize that, but too much blue in your light will actually reduce your yield, and it shifts the metabolism of the plant more towards leaves. This is why T5s and even white LEDs with no red added are not that great in flower. So with MegaDrive, you can dim either one of these channels from 0 to 100%. So you can really tailor the spectrum and the intensity to whatever crop, whatever phase of growth, whatever the conditions are. And now when we come to controls, the MegaDrive system has a built-in Bluetooth mesh system with an app and also a cloud function. There's no extra cost for this. It's built into the system. The app is free to download. That allows you to manually control the lights. You can also set up programs during the day, during the week, during the month, or even the entire grow schedule. We also have an option for a hardwired touchscreen, very inexpensive compared to normal controllers. This will control an unlimited number of lights through a single touchscreen controller. We also have a cloud function, so you can run this from wherever you are. Then we have integration packages for most third-party environmental controllers. So it's an easy, either hardwired or Bluetooth connection directly to those controllers. So this gives you a wide number of options. Also, a function integrated into the MegaDrive is its ability to use a wireless photo sensor. So the photo sensor can be placed anywhere under the canopy in a greenhouse, for example. You could put it in a central location or in a shady area, and that will automatically dim and raise the lights in that particular zone fully automatically with no interaction through an intermediary controller. Next, with the power supply is not attached to the lights, it gives you freedom really to locate them almost anywhere, either on inside the grow facility, outside the grow facility, mounted on the wall, mounted on the floor. It can be mounted in the superstructure of a greenhouse. So you have a lot of different options for where you put the power supply, and you can also get the heat related to the drivers out of the canopy. Even in multi-level, you get to pull the drivers out of the shelves, so you reduce some of the heat there, and you're allowed to mount the fixture closer to the upper part of the shelf.
Hi, I'm Craig Adams from California Lightworks. We're very excited to introduce our new greenhouse lighting series. It's called MegaDrive. It consists of a separate power supply and then a series of specially designed fixtures. There are a number of very important innovations in this new series, and we really think it represents a major change in the greenhouse lighting. So the heart of this MegaDrive system is the 400-watt MegaDrive fixture. This is a 400-watt LED fixture with dual spectrum, separate channels for red and white, which can be dimmed from 0 to 100%, either manually or fully automatically. It features Bluetooth controls, can be controlled with any Bluetooth device, a smartphone, a tablet, laptop. It also has a cloud function, so you can control the lights and the programs from virtually anywhere in the world. They're all water resistant. There's no electrical parts, there's no driver in the actual unit. That's from the central power supply. So you have a very lightweight, very efficient fixture, which you can daisy chain up to 30 fixtures with virtually no power drops over the canopy. So some of the important features about this new fixture, first of all, you have a very high efficiency, up to 3 micromoles per joule, a maximum power wattage of 400 watts. So that'll give you an average of 1100 ppf out of the light, which is a very high amount of light out of a relatively small and low-powered fixture. This gives you the maximum flexibility as far as high and low light levels, as far as how you space these. So the heart of the MegaDrive system is the MegaDrive driver. It takes incoming 480 volts, then can power up to 30 400-watt lights. So this can be mounted near the incoming power, mount on the wall, and then simple cables to the lights over the greenhouse. So that means no more electrical wiring in the canopy, no more expensive approvals. You just need to get permits for the incoming plug at 480. Everything else is independent. Included is wireless Bluetooth communications. This allows you to run calendars, on-off times, sunrise, sunset, spectrum control with the separate red and white controls operated independently. This allows you to do sunlights in red and focus on red for yield. And then you can run all your controls through those existing environmental controllers, or these can run independently in each zone of 30 lights, which you can program on any Bluetooth device, a smartphone, a laptop or tablet, or through the internet, through a cloud, through any desktop computer. So you have the maximum control with the least amount of infrastructure for wiring, for electrical outlets, for data cables, all very simplified, all very high efficiency, and a much lower cost than any traditional LED or HID light.
So if we look at the specific solutions that we think we've achieved with MegaDrive, first of all, high fixture cost. Eliminating the driver, which often can be as much as 30% of the total cost of the fixture, we can reduce the overall hardware and fixture costs. High installation costs are solved by eliminating the power drops over the canopy. So you just have one power drop at the head of a row or on a wall to power all the lights in a row. So this drastically reduces installation costs. We eliminate the shadow effect or separate drivers in a greenhouse by eliminating those drivers altogether. So you have a much more efficient, much less shadow effect over the canopy. The two-channel spectrum control really can focus on crop yield and quality, where it's a function of light intensity and the best balanced spectrum for each phase of growth. We eliminate the high cost of controllers by integrating Bluetooth or hardware controllers right in the basic system at almost no additional cost. And if you do have an expensive controller system, we can interact with those either hardwired or wirelessly. So you can run all the controls through those controllers. One point also is flexibility. If you have hardwired connections and fixed drivers, it's very expensive to move those, change them, or relocate them. MegaDrive, you can easily make these portable. Once you outgrow a facility, you can take your light system with you. I have a client in Maine right now who's building 2 greenhouses, but he has a large indoor operation. So we're running the MegaDrive indoor, and as soon as the greenhouse is ready, we're shifting the lights over there. Can do it in half a day. So let's talk about applications. So we can adapt these MegaDrive fixtures to almost any grow operation. And our biggest focus is on greenhouse, traditional indoor, especially HPS replacement, and vertical multi-level grows. So in greenhouse, obviously, a lot of these advantages come into play: reduce fixture costs, reduce the installation costs, reduce the shadow effect, optimize the spectrum for bloom, 2-channel spectrum control, sequential dimming. This means that you can have the red dim separately from the white. So in a greenhouse, this is interesting because the red is so much more efficient than the other spectrum. You can start where the light comes up in red according to the photosensor, and it will stay in that high efficiency mode as it goes up and down to maintain a certain light level. And then as it goes up to full blast, it adds the white. So it gives you an even more efficient usage of that dimming. Very high efficiency, up to 3.2 micromoles, especially in the red channels. Integrated controls, integrated photosensor option, flexible installations. We also offer complete light designs where we can lay out the fixtures, the power supply placement on any light project. We offer a 5-year warranty, everything made in California.
Hi, it's Craig Adams. We're in Carpinteria at Glasshouse Farms. This is about
150,000 square feet of canopy event.
150,000 square foot greenhouse, all glass, very nice. This is one of the cleanest and longest surviving greenhouse operation in Carpinteria. It's kind of the benchmark that everybody else is trying to hit. So you've got this operation here, and you recently added another one?
This was our first farm, is 150,000 square feet, and then we just recently added a 355,000 square foot farm just down the road, also here in Santa Barbara.
So we're doing our first pilot installation of our new MegaDrive LED system.
You know, one of our mottos here at Glasshouse is quality and consistency delivered efficiently. And part of that is taking a very systematic approach to things where we want to know exactly how we achieved what we achieved so that we can tune it to make it better, and then we can do that over and over again. Our goal is to create the finest quality flower at the best price for the California consumer today, and hopefully the national consumer eventually. So we take a pretty data-centric approach to things, and
thought that this would be a good spot for us to test out the lights, since we have a large enough space to average data results over. It's all computer programmed climate, it's all computer programmed irrigation, and so it makes it a really good side-by-side platform to test just one variable changing, which in this case is the addition of some supplemental lights.
So here we are in the section with our tests going on here with the new California Lightworks MegaDrive system. Pretty much the same parameters as everything else in this greenhouse, obviously with supplemental light. So it really is a beautiful harvest coming here. We did really extensive large buds, very well spread out throughout the plant. Really nice height, but we're still getting buds throughout the plant. So if we compare that to exactly the same strain, same conditions, which have just been operating under natural sunlight, you can see still looks pretty good, not bad at all, but you can see the size of the plants is much smaller, the size of the colos is much smaller. Just generally, this is a more typical greenhouse yield. This is kind of our wrap up of the first kind of phase of this test. We've gone through two harvests, I think.
Yeah, so we have one harvest that was completed all the way to finished flower, and a second harvest is actually in dry and processing right now.
So this is number 3, and these are already in flower yet? They've already flipped?
They're starting to flip. Yeah, so this will be the third grow under these lights.
Sure. So I just wanted to touch base with Graham again, kind of see what we learned so far. Obviously, right now we're in the heart of the winter where you really should see the biggest advantage of supplemental lighting.
Yeah.
But I think we've learned a lot along the way. We've experimented with all on, both the white and red channels. We did a series with just the white on.
Yep.
Now we're doing a series just with the red on to kind of compare the gains in yield, see if there's any changes in the chemical profiles.
Sure.
So what can you say so far just on the 2 rounds we did?
Yeah, so we were really happy with things. The first round that was fully processed, we saw was from the middle of the summer when we have lots of light, and we still saw an almost 30% improvement and increase in finished product. So we were really happy with that. We appreciate and enjoy the adjustable spectrum. Being able to use both the white and the red independently is great. We can use the red when we're just looking for a boost, as it's the most efficient, and then bring the white in when we're looking for all the light that we can get. The lights were easy to hang. One central power source per run basically was a lot easier than having to run drops to every single fixture. Right. Being able to control it with the phone was nice. We've got it plugged in the Priva now, I believe. So it's dimming itself off of the outdoor ambient light was great. And all in all, here we are doing the third one. We wouldn't be doing that if we weren't happy with the first 2.
Very cool. This is Scott D. Larvin, who's the engineer and operations manager here. This is about a 90,000 square foot greenhouse operation split into 9 different bays. So this is a typical size bay for their operation. Each bay is individually controlled with blackout, with its own environmental control. And this is one of our first pilot programs with our new MegaDrive greenhouse lights.
This has been the easiest one to install, easiest to manage.
Well, I think the combination of Bluetooth controls, so there's no hard wiring and no electric power drops over the canopy, saves so much time and money. We had an electrician here maybe for half a day, 3/4 of a day running the 240 volt outlets. We had a couple guys hanging lights for not even a whole day.
Half a day. On a scissor lift, we were done.
Pretty much ready to go. One of the cool features of our new MegaDrive system is automatic photo sensor. This can be placed virtually anywhere you want over the canopy. It's wireless, Bluetooth, so you can put it in a shady spot, put it in a centralized spot, and this will allow you to make your own setting on the lot level of the sun, at which point you want the lights to come off and on, and that'll respond to the blackout curtains or to the movement of the sun. And this is all Bluetooth, so no additional wiring, very flexible on the placement. Really, this allows you to use the absolute minimum amount of electricity while running the lights. You're never overlighting, you're never underlighting. So we've done a light plan to try to compensate for the lack of light we'll have across the winter, hopefully come close to summer yield. And that's the main objective.
Or even when the fog rolls in, because we're right next to the ocean here, we'll get a fog bank rolls right in. These lights, it's just like daylight here. I mean, it's nice.
So here's the heart of the MegaDrive system. We have central power supplies running this whole room from a bank of 6 of these drivers. So all we had to do electrically was get a series of 240 volt outlets. These will mount on the wall quite simply. A bracket on unistrut, very simple. These have, each driver has 2 cables, one going through the lights and one returning. So really quite simple, easy to install. I say in most cases you'd have to have an electrician working for 2-3 days, putting outlets for each single fixture or a small group of fixtures, which is really the bulk of the cost in a typical installation.
Yeah. Well, it was just back to the ease of installation. Put up the lights, half day, install these. Not much time in putting in the 3-phase drop for this to make this work right. And then we just kept the lights in groups of the cables associated with the 20 lights, one set of cables. So it was cabling and connection super easy. Just popped it right in, plugged into service. We were in business. We were running. We're done.
The other cool feature about the MegaDrive system is our wireless programming.
Yes.
Works off Bluetooth. You can program it with any Bluetooth device.
It's open architecture, evidently. It works on any smartphone.
So you've had a little bit of experience with that. How has that been to use?
The app's been super easy. It was the setting the spectrum up, the timing. It's pretty, like, it's intuitive.
So this allows you to turn off and on the lights manually, change the spectrum manually, dim the lights manually, or you can set a program, come on for 12 hours. You could even have sunrise, sunset if you wanted. You could do different spectrum.
Or even multiple lighting schedules throughout a 24-hour day.
This is a great start. So I just want to thank you, and it really looks nice.
It was easy working with you guys.
So you can see the advantages in a greenhouse applications, but we also see similar advantages in indoor and multi-level solutions. Obviously, all the same advantages would apply, like reduced fixture costs, much reduced installation costs, no power drops over the canopy or under the shelves, no drivers over the canopy or under the shelves, no drivers even in the grill room at all. You can move those outside in the hallway, remove that heat source from the grow room itself. You have optimized spectrum. Number one, starting off for bloom, high power in red. Next, especially indoor, quality and spectrum control is a major advantage. So you can run separate programs for beds, pre-flower, flower, and final finishing. You can save these on a program. You can even do specific programs for specific strains and keep those in memory and just rerun them. You have very high efficiency with up to 3.2 micromoles per joule. Once again, flexible installations. You can expand, contract, move these to another room without any loss of your investment. We offer complete light designs here at California Lightworks. So send us your basic floor plan and we'll put a MegaDrive light plan for you together. 5-year warranty, local service, made in California.
Hi, I'm Craig Adams, California Lightworks. We are in Lompoc, California with Exotics. They are a licensed indoor and outdoor grower in Southern California. And this is really our first indoor experience with our new MegaDrive LED series, where they've been running for quite a while with HPS on a single level, running at 480 volts. These draw about 1,100 watts each. So now we're converting to 400 watt MegaDrive LEDs and going to dual level with almost the same electricity, a little bit higher, but a much higher light output in total. And we can split it up into 2 levels.
I mean, the transition's been easy. It's been pretty seamless. I mean, their installation was a couple hours. I mean, so that's all good. And as far as I'm the grower sales part. I mean, our whole goal is the highest amount of grams per watt used of electricity. So the higher I can get that number, the higher our profit is. So.
Anything else you've noticed with LEDs? Have you worked with LEDs before?
Yeah, I've worked with some other brands in the past. I'm really liking these ones. They seem to be doing the job. They're more intense than anything I've ran, and the plants seem to love it.
Hey, Greg Adams here. We're back in Lone Poke.
Swapping over to LED was pretty smooth. We had to change the feeding a little bit different and do some tweaks, but it was a real smooth transition. We're pretty happy with them. I think there's definitely more trichomes produced, a little bit more frostier buds. I think our weight's there, and we'll know here in a few weeks.
So we're back with Wesley at Exotics, and they've been able to go through a nice round of flowering. They're well into their second round. So I just kind of wanted to follow up, see how it went. How did we do versus HPS?
It went pretty good. I mean, our goal for LED is around 2 light, and we were right around 2.3 to 2.5, which is very good for LEDs. So, I mean, the whole thing's maximizing your square footage. And so if you go linear square foot, instead of getting 3 a light, we're at 5. Nice. So that's good, yeah. Even though per light it's less, it's more linear than it was for 1 HPS. So,
and were you able to see any difference about the quality or the lab reports? Or
I'd say terpene profile was definitely higher. The you look at trichomes, you like frostiness, what people like is frosty bud. I'd say it's more frosty, better terp.
Do you have any idea about energy usage, or is it hard to tell?
It didn't affect our amps higher or anything like that, so it was up. So there's 2 levels, so it was less than 1 before. So basically, a single row of HPS. What was your gain on the double row with LED in general? In yield or light?
Yield.
So instead of 36 pounds per row, in the LED row, even though it was double stacked, we got 60.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
So it's very,
Definitely pays for the electricity, the higher fixture costs.
Yeah, higher fixture costs. But I mean, as soon as that cost is out, you're...
Nice.
Yeah.
So now you're in the process of converting all this outdoor space. You got the new building coming in.
Yeah, all this will be a 30,000 square foot, 1,200 light LED building.
Nice.
So.
Great. Well, I call that a win-win.
Yeah, I'd say pretty good.
All right,
yeah.
man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
So, just in summary, we really think the MegaDrive system targets these challenges pretty well. Just to reiterate, lower fixture costs by removing individual drivers, lower installation costs by eliminating the power drops over the canopy, higher efficiency with high efficiency diodes and optimized spectrum control, better yields and lower power usage through dynamic spectrum control, more even yields and lower power usage in a greenhouse with integrated light sensor, flexible installation and maintenance with no fixed power drops, and lower controller costs with integrated smart controls. And with that, I'd like to open it up to questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Craig, for that presentation and those excellent videos. I think that gave us just a great overview and a lot of in-depth understanding of the MegaDrive, especially as we went through some of those case studies. I'll just remind everyone real quick. I know a few people have chimed in already, but you'll see the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to open that up and send in your questions, and we've got some time here to run through a few of those. I want to start off with a few install technical sort of questions. Just to get us going, I guess just in a general sense, what type of power does the MegaDrive accept, whether that's single phase or 3-phase or what have you?
Yep, sure. So the MegaDrive is designed to be very flexible when it comes to what type of power it could accept. So it can take any voltage between 208 volt all the way to 480 volt. And that could be either single phase or three phase. So practically any type of power, globally that you could look at, you can connect the MegaDrive to that without any issues. Obviously we prefer to connect to three-phase power, and the higher the voltage, the better. That makes it easier and less costly from a wiring standpoint. Smaller gauge wires, the higher the voltage. But yeah, generally almost all facilities that we go to have three-phase power. If they have 480, that makes it really straightforward and simple for them to install. The MegaDrive also, it is UL listed. It is listed, certified for wet location. So you can pretty much place it anywhere. That's convenient. Ideally, you want to be closer to the power panels to make the electrical wiring easier. You also have a breaker on the unit itself. From a safety standpoint, that we built that in, and we have the surge protection built into the unit as well. So, from a reliability and safety standpoint, it doesn't get any better than MegaDrive.
Excellent. Regarding just installation in general, we have a few questions there. I know, Craig, earlier you had mentioned you might be looking at anywhere from 2,000 to 2,000 drivers in other settings, down to maybe 60 here. When converting to a system like the MegaDrive, what are some of the best practices for installation that folks might want to consider when making a switch?
Well, obviously it all starts from where your incoming power is located. And that's generally what we lay out during a light plan. We'll have to work with the grower to figure out what's the simplest layout for electrically. Obviously, that we like running the power supplies along a wall. Ideally, you have a hallway. You can do them on the inside of a hallway close to the power panel, so you make relatively short power runs from the panel to the power supply. Then we can do it through the computerized light plan to optimize the actual placement of the fixtures. One consideration, if you're moving from HPS, where the lights tend to hang from a single point, to MegaDrive, it's a linear function. So generally we ask people to put in unistrut, which are relatively inexpensive steel channels that you run over the canopy. Then you can just hang the lights. You can move the lights back and forth. It's just a matter, even unskilled labor can just hang the lights, plug in the cables. That's probably the biggest difference, is that single point hanging to this linear idea. But hanging off unistrut is much more flexible, and you only need a few drops from the ceiling, and then you do long runs on that steel structure. Other than that, it's just a question of getting light uniformity over the entire canopy. And that's what we handle, kind of looking at how many lights per row, how close are they, how close are the rows together. So that's really our job, to come with a complete package, which installs easily based on where the incoming power is.
Excellent. Yeah, and with regard to those centralized drivers, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but could you talk just a bit about heat and how this might drop heat levels just in general from the lighting fixtures?
Sure. Yeah, let me take that. So generally in a light fixture, you have two sources of heat. You have the heat generated from the LED diodes themselves, and then you have the heat generated from the drivers. Drivers are measured by efficiency. It's a percentage. Usually typical driver efficiency is in the 90% range. With the MegaDrive, we're upward of 95% efficient, simply because we're able to consolidate the power supply in a single unit and design it with the highest efficiency in mind. There, if the higher the efficiency, the less heat you're going to generate from the driver. So if you compare how much of the heat from a fixture is generated from the driver versus the LEDs, it's not huge, but it's still a significant amount. And being able to remove that from the fixture itself and then place it remotely, you have the flexibility to put it, let's say, outside of the room or outside of the greenhouse area where heat management may be a little bit more challenging. So by doing so, that's less heat that you have to eliminate from the room when the LEDs are running. So it could be significant. So on a single MegaDrive, you're looking at 10,000 watts at 95% efficiency, or about 500 watts. So 500 watts of power per MegaDrive, system could be eliminated from the room. Therefore, that's less heat that you have to negate using your AC system.
Definitely. Earlier, you guys have been talking about the 2-channel programmable spectrum control, which of course is a terrific feature here. Could you maybe just sort of run through in a high level to those new to LEDs, perhaps, what kind of learning curve there might be, or how someone might get familiar with running those 2 channels?
Sure. Everything starts with the plant, obviously, and different plants have different light requirements. In general, any fruit or flowering plants tend to need much higher intensity and also need a higher level of red saturation to get their full yield. Cannabis is probably the highest light demanding crop that's commercially grown. After that, you have things like tomatoes and peppers, and which also have a very high light demand, and it's direct relationship of yield to the amount of light. And also the idea that you want a less percentage blue and a higher ratio of red is important, but that's totally the opposite for, let's say, even with cannabis, if you're in veg or leafy greens or lettuce, these actually need a higher ratio of blue and less dependency on that high red level. So in most cases, you'd use a different fixture for those 2 types of applications, whether it's flower or vegetative growth. That's been one of our key themes, that we allow you to do that in one fixture. Because first, in veg compared to flower, you really need about half the light density. So if you start with a fixture that's optimized for bloom, like we do, you can dim down a lot of the red and still have the precise level of light and that good blue-red ratio for veg or for leafy greens or whatever your crop is. In some cases, we have a veg spectrum that's specific for that. If you were in a greenhouse doing only lettuce, it has a higher saturation in blue when you're at full power. But I think for cannabis growers, which is obviously our main business, you can play with that red-blue ratio. It actually changes the way the plant grows. Higher red levels tend to make the plants stretch, and with higher spacing between the nodes, higher levels of blue will do just the opposite. You'll have squat, bushy plants with less spacing between the nodes. So for most growers, they prefer a nice shorter bushy plant coming out of edge. Then when you flip them into flower, you go into that high red, and the plant will stretch for about 2 weeks, and then it stops all that plant growth and converts all its energy to bud and resin development, where you use that red to drive it. So I would say those are the 2 functions. I mean, red-blue ratio is difference between veg and bloom. A lot of growers also like to finish in blue. Once you've gotten your yield, you're towards the end of your flower cycle. Blue really drives terpenes, THC levels, CBD levels. So in the old days, people used to start, they'd veg under metal halide, they'd switch to HPS for bulk of the bloom, go back to metal halide for the last 2 weeks. That's what we can do with a single fixture with LEDs, where we've got those blue-red ratios just perfectly adjusted, especially for cannabis. So, and you can also get more elaborate. You can do gradual transitions from veg to bloom rather than doing it all at once. You also have a built-in sunrise sunset function, which you can just select off the controller, because it's a bit of a shock to a plant to turn the lights on all at once or to turn them off all at once, because it's really not a natural progression. So they tend to get a little stunned and they lose growth at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. You can eliminate that with a sunrise sunset effect. So those are the main things. And obviously every strain is different though. Some strains like higher light level, some strains like higher red levels. You have to experiment a little bit. to get to know the particular strain. But once you dial that in, you can save the light levels on the program. And every time you run that strain, you just rerun that program.
Excellent. Yeah, I've got a couple good segues there to some other questions. I think I'm going to go with one that I believe came in during the Zodix video toward the end of the presentation. You've already begun talking about it there, but could you talk a bit about how the MegaDrive increases the terpene profile in particular?
Well, as I just said, we know from, there's a great body of research from university and government level. Obviously, until now, it hasn't been focused on cannabis, but that's starting. But in all those lab tests where they're analyzing blue-red ratios, red is really the driver of yield, balanced with a certain amount of blue. And then blue really seems to be the driver of chemical profiles, where red gives you bulk plants, but not great quality, not great smells, but you get great yield. It's a typical HPS yield, where a blue light like a metal halide will give you much better resin development, better smells, much better chemical profiles. And you can see this. We've done a lot of side-by-side tests focused between high red ratio, high blue ratio. The blue ratio definitely improves those chemical profiles just from the physics of how the plant processes light. But the trouble is blue will really limit your yield because it tends to shift weight away from the buds. So the idea is to go through as much red as possible, then to the last 1 or 2 weeks, gradually decrease the red and blast it with blue. And it really does up all those chemical profiles without hampering your yield that much once you've got it.
Excellent. Earlier in discussing greenhouses in particular, you had mentioned the wireless photo sensor and its sun balancing effects. Could you talk a bit about how that is integrated with the MegaDrive and how those interplay with each other?
Yeah, sure. So we have a Bluetooth mesh network, and each MegaDrive has a Bluetooth receiver. So it becomes one of the nodes in the mesh. So as you spread these around your greenhouse, you create this mesh network that allows you to integrate additional devices such as a light sensor. So the light sensor could be programmed per group, and basically within that group, it will, based on the light levels that you're getting from the sun, send commands to that group of MegaDrives and adjust the light levels to keep the canopy, PPFD as even as possible. So you have some controls. You set up the thresholds that you're looking for, depending on the DLI that you're targeting. And the light sensor will basically automate and make sure that the light is balanced according to how much sunlight you're receiving. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. Having it wireless obviously allows you to place it anywhere over the canopy and make sure that the position of the light sensor is optimal for that particular group of lights.
And it's pretty simple to program. You just enter your target light level, at which point you want to, let's say if you want to maintain 500 micromoles and not to go below that, you set in 500. Whenever the sunlight drops below that level, the lights will automatically dim up by stages until, if it's totally dark, obviously the lights would be on full blast. But if the sun comes out or the blackout curtains open up, that'll automatically dim down and shut off. So very simple to program, and it doesn't need an outside controller. You don't have to run it to the controller to get those commands, which most light systems have to do.
Excellent. We have a couple sort of multi-level questions. Could you talk a bit about the height above the canopy that might be ideal for MegaDrive installation, whether there's any different considerations a grower might need to keep in mind?
Sure, that's a hot topic with LEDs because I would say most of our competitors, at least the earlier ones, had a very low intensity. So you really needed to get the LEDs like super close to get any kind of yield. And you just raise a little bit and you lose the light intensity. And I think that's what most people kind of expected LEDs to do. Our design from the beginning has been really to replace HPS,
So that means high intensity, very narrow angles and high directional angles like you would get with a 1,000-watt HPS with a reflector. So in general, we like to go a minimum of 3 feet off the top of the canopy. If you start to get closer than that, you can get as much as 24 inches off the canopy, but you start to get hot spots below that. But we really prefer if you have highly reflected walls, like in a grow room or in a tent, let's say, we always prefer to go higher because you're not going to lose any light by putting the lights higher. So in a lot of cases, if we have a 20-foot ceiling with all white reflective walls, we like to go as high as possible. That way you get light bouncing off the walls. So you don't lose any light because all the photons are bouncing back to the canopy eventually. And when you have light coming up high or from multiple directions, you get deeper penetration into the canopy because you've got photons going all over, where a traditional LED with very close to the canopy, the top fan leaves tend to camp out and they take all the light and you get very little penetration into the lower canopy. So, and a little bit like HPS, you go high, you get a lot of photons bouncing. Now you get even yield throughout the whole plant, and your total yield will be much higher than an LED that's really close to the canopy.
Excellent. I'll note to everyone that any questions we don't get to, we're going to make sure that you are connected with California Lightworks team. But I wanted to make sure we got to more of a logistics type question. We have a few folks who have asked about approval in Canada. So I'm just curious about Canada or any other international considerations that we might want to keep in mind here.
Sure. So yeah, the MegaDrive is UL listed, as I mentioned. It's UL and CUL for Canada, and it meets the electrical standards for other international installations. So typically in Europe, we see a requirement to have CE. So we have met all the requirements for CE, and we have the certifications for that as well. So for most of North America and Europe, we believe the fixture is ready to be installed.
And I would mention for Canada, it runs automatically at 347 volts, which is a typical voltage in Canada. So this is fully automatic. It'll be optimized for that kind of voltage. One other thing I would mention is DLC, which is the efficiency approvals for getting rebates from utility companies. Most all our fixtures are DLC compliant. They're developing a new standard for this idea of a centralized driver and multiple fixtures. In fact, we're helping them write the specifications. That's almost done. What would you say, George?
So yeah, June is the next release. So by June, we will have MegaDrive DLC listed as well.
And we've been working directly with utilities. We can help you get those rebates. The main thing is we need to prove the higher efficiency levels than their threshold HPS benchmarks, and we blow those away. We're more efficient than single driver LEDs by far, so that's been no problem qualifying for rebates. And like I say, DLC will be done early summer.
Excellent. Well, like I had said, we can certainly help make connections, but I wanted to end with maybe action items or next steps for folks who are interested. I know, Craig, you had mentioned some of the early steps might be a light plan, but where can folks go next if they want to continue this conversation with you?
Yeah, just give us a call. We have a very experienced sales staff. We cover all types of applications. Then just make contact with us. You'll get a salesman to contact you or talk to you right away. And it's fairly simple. We just ask you for your basic floor plan, your dimensions of your floor plan, the layout, what crop you're growing, simple things like ceiling height, how high is the bench, etc., how reflective are your walls. We'll put that into a computer, and that gives us a beautiful light plan that shows exactly how many fixtures, how they should be spaced, the total power usage, where the power supply should be mounted, and how you would structure the different lights over the canopy. A very simple process. It's no charge, no obligation. So we're doing light plans all day long.
Terrific. Well, I want to make a note real quick that once again, we'll be sending out a archived video of today's presentation to everyone who attended and everyone who registered. It'll also be available on cannabisbusinesstimes.com. I certainly want to thank the audience for attending today. This was a fantastic presentation. And Craig and George and the entire California Lightworks team, I want to thank you so much for the insight that you provided today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.